Ah, Valentine's Day. The day of love, sweet gestures, and heart-shaped everything. It would be very uncharacteristic to talk about Valentine's Day on this channel without involving some kind of dark twist. But that's exactly what we'll do. Believe it or not, amidst the sea of roses and affectionate surprises, there have been moments when, along with Cupid's arrows, came something far more sinister and lethal. Today, we'll be diving into a violent shooting that happened on the day of love, involving an esteemed athlete. He has been referred to as the Blade Runner, or the fastest man with no legs. Oscar Pistorius is certainly no stranger in the Paralympics community, especially when you consider his remarkable achievements, like winning 6 Paralympic gold medals, along with the bronze and silver, as well as being the first double amputee athlete to compete against able-bodied runners in the regular Olympics. Yet Oscar managed to make headlines for a much more sinister reason on February 14th, 2013. It was early morning, and as Oscar later claimed, he believed that a possible intruder had broken into his home in Pretoria, South Africa, where he heard a noise from the bathroom. Rather than firing a warning shot, Oscar reacted by grabbing his gun from under the bed and firing 4 shots through the closed bathroom door. In a tragic turn of events, the person on the other side of the door did not end up being an intruder at all, but rather his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. This case went ongoing for years due to the various appeals made and even overturned verdicts that occurred in the courts. Let's dive into what may have happened that night. The stakes are as high as they could ever be. The famed Paralympic hero was on trial for the murder of his own lover. In an effort to form a formidable defense for his case, Oscar resorted to presenting an affidavit of the series of events leading up to that fateful Valentine's Day morning. It started with Oscar falling asleep with his girlfriend, Riva. At some point that early morning, Oscar wakes up due to the heat and humidity and goes outside to the balcony to bring a fan, close the sliding door, blinds, and curtains. While doing this, however, Oscar hears a noise from the bathroom and assumes an intruder was inside. In the supposedly pitch-black bedroom, Oscar was too scared to turn on a light, but instead grabbed his gun from underneath the bed, screamed at the intruder to leave, and told Riva to call the police, mistakenly believing she was still on the bed. After which, Oscar fires 4 shots through the bathroom door, and eventually realizes that Riva wasn't on the bed, but likely the person that was in the bathroom. He attempts to open the bathroom door, discovering that it was locked, screams for help out the balcony, puts on his prosthetic legs to kick the door down to no avail, and finally grabs a cricket bat to break the door. From there, a neighbor who was woken up to the sound of gunshots and a woman screaming found Oscar praying over Riva's body when he went over to help. This was the story that Oscar put forward to explain what happened that tragic night. And during trial, his defense revolved around Oscar having no intention to kill Riva Steenkamp, as he acted in self-defense by shooting at what Oscar genuinely believed to be an intruder. The point of contention was determining if a reasonable person under those circumstances would have fired those shots. Had that been the case, Oscar should be held accountable for culpable homicide, the negligent, unlawful killing of another person, but not murder. On the other hand, the prosecution postulated a different and more heinous story, in which Oscar Pistorius deliberately shot and killed his girlfriend, who he knew was inside the bathroom after the couple got into a heated argument that early morning. His praying, crying, claims that he thought it was a burglar, and breaking of the door was all an act that he devised and premeditated whilst his girlfriend was alive in the bathroom. All so he could get away with what he actually did, gunning Riva Steenkamp down in a cold-blooded fashion. The prosecution's case was based on contested testimony of witnesses living nearby that claimed they heard an argument and a woman screaming prior to the gunshots. However, the defense rebutted by claiming that the screaming was from Oscar himself and that the neighbors mistook the sounds of Oscar swinging the cricket bat as explosive sounds that they believed to be the gunshots. Casting doubt onto the prosecution's case, text messages between the couple were also revealed to illustrate the relationship they had with one another. One of the texts, sent by Riva less than 3 weeks before the killing, stated, "I'm scared of you sometimes, of how you snap at me," and she described his behavior as nasty. However, just a few hours before Riva's death, when it was February 13th, she texted him saying, "You are an amazing person with so many blessings, and you are more than cared for." Oscar offered her to stay the night, and during the trial, he read out loud the Valentine's Day card given to him by Riva. Inside the card, Riva wrote, "I think today is a good day to tell you that I love you." Throughout the trial, Oscar reportedly had a multitude of emotional outbursts. A social worker and probation officer assigned to Oscar testified that he was truly remorseful for Riva's death. The prosecutor wasn't buying it, however, as he believed Oscar didn't show remorse at all, and that he had emotional outbursts due to being frustrated that his version of events is improbable. Psychiatric and psychological assessments of Oscar were also brought up at trial, which boiled down to Oscar being diagnosed with an anxiety disorder since childhood, and in the aftermath of the shooting, experienced post-traumatic stress disorder. But during the time of the shooting, Oscar was still capable of discerning between right and wrong, and his anxiety was not severe enough to impair his mental function. The final piece of the puzzle was Oscar's history with guns. According to the testimony of Sean Renz, the manager of the International Firearm Training Academy in Walkerville, Oscar had a great love and enthusiasm for guns. He wanted to purchase several weapons from Sean, knew the rules around guns in South Africa, and how to deal with intruders. Additionally, an ex-girlfriend of Oscar claimed that he shot a gun out of a sunroof after getting pulled over for speeding by the police. A couple of points worth raising here in support of the prosecution's case is Oscar's propensity for losing his temper and firing guns as a way of relieving it, as well as possessing greater knowledge than the average person about handling a firearm and the damage it is capable of. All these factors contributed to a highly circumstantial and thus complicated case to judge. But ultimately, the moment that everyone had been waiting for in Oscar's trial had finally arrived. The final verdict, which was rendered unanimously by the judge and her two successors, found the defendant, Oscar Pistorius, not guilty on the charge of murder. He did, however, receive a guilty verdict for the charge of culpable homicide, as he behaved negligently, used excessive force, and didn't take sufficient action to avoid the death from occurring.
Viewed in its totality, the evidence failed to establish that the accused had the requisite intention to kill the deceased, let alone with premeditation. The state clearly has not proved beyond reasonable doubt that the accused is guilty of premeditated murder.
This decision did not stand for long, though, as an appeal was made by the prosecution to overturn the verdict. And it worked, because South Africa's Supreme Court of Appeal justified their decision of finding Oscar guilty of murder in December 2015. This is because, even though he may not have intended to shoot Riva, the fact remains that Oscar knowingly used a high-caliber weapon, had firearms training, and was more than aware that whoever was behind that door was going to die. Who Oscar thought he was shooting at was completely irrelevant, but since it ended up being his girlfriend he killed. The appeal judges described this case as a human tragedy of Shakespearean proportions. As a result of the verdict being overturned to a murder conviction, Oscar had another 9 years of imprisonment tacked onto his sentence in November 2017. In a recent development that happened in January 2024, Oscar Pistorius was released on parole after serving 9 years of his sentence. But despite all the time that has passed, if you believe Oscar Pistorius' story of the events that transpired that night, then I'm sure you can also agree that he, as well as all the families involved, haven't fully recovered from the heartbreak they experienced that haunting Valentine's Day.
Well, what is the question you're asking me? Well, how I feel about him personally?
Yes.
He's shown no remorse. He's shown no remorse. And it would only show remorse, I think, if it contributes to his getting out of jail. That's what I believe.
It's an
We
almost
haven't had the full story. I don't believe that it's the truth. Changed his mind 3 times under oath to a different story. And we don't believe that's the truth of the story. That's what we want, the truth.